Greetings and salutations. Welcome to another edition of 360 Info Network, brought to you by the Cleveland Observer, our print partner in media. Pleased to have them aboard today and pleased to be bringing you another episode. I'm characterizing this as an international show. I am in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, and our brother Antonio is all the way in Accra, Ghana, experiencing the beauty and the wonder of the continent in that beautiful country of Ghana. So, welcome to another edition. We're glad to have you aboard, and we'll be presenting some announcements to you momentarily. But before we do that, we'd like to introduce you to the founder and the creator of 360 Info Network, our dear brother, Antonio. Antonio?
Welcome, welcome. We got a great show for you today. This is the last day of so-called Black History Month, when actually, as far as the history of Black folks, is world history. We all know that in 365. But again, we're going to go along with the program at this particular time. Got a great show for you today. I think it's appropriate for me to go to one of my old quotes. What you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself. What you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself. And what you know of yourself depends on what you've been told of yourself. And that's one of the topics of the show today, of what you've been told of yourself, and talking about Black folks' consciousness. Black folks' consciousness in America, Black folks' consciousness in Africa and around the world and in the diaspora. So we got a great show for you, great shows for you. We are honored to have our guest here, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. You may want to call some people up and get them locked in and tuned in, because we're going to have a powerful show.
All right. Well, our guest this morning is also in Ghana. He is Obinfo Obadele Bakari Cambone. He helps Black people repatriate and get Ghanaian citizenship at repatriateToGhana.com. He's a world-renowned master linguist, multi-award-winning scholar, and the architect of Abubi Tumi, the oldest and largest Black social education network on the planet. He completed his PhD in linguistics at the University of Ghana in 2012, winning the prestigious Vice Chancellor's Award for the best PhD thesis in the humanities. He also won the 2016 and 2024 Provost's Publications Awards for best published work in the UG College of Humanities. In 2019, he was the recipient of the Marcus Mosiah Garvey Foundation Award for Excellence in African Studies and Education. He was awarded the 2020-2021 University of Lagos Area Cluster Center Fellowship, that's a mouthful, where he contributed significantly to the work of reconfiguring African studies. In 2025, he was awarded the Kwame Nkrumah Award for Pan-African Leadership by the Pan-African Leadership Institute. And it was important for me to read all of that, and there's more to it, but it's important for me to read that to you just so you get a sense of who this brother is and the work that he's been doing. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to bring to you Obinfo Obadele Cambone. Brother Obadele, how you doing?
I'm Black Powerful. How are you?
Excellent.
It's good, good. Like I said, it's a pleasure to have you here, brother. You know, and one of the main reasons too that I'm excited about having you here is because early in my 20s, I pondered on, a lot of the information that we was having as far as religion, spirituality, and things like that. And at an early age, I understood and knew that linguistics could be the thing to clear up a lot of this misinformation about religion, spirituality, who we are, where we come from, and things of that nature. So by having the linguistics on, that helps zero in some things, because it streamlines you into who were the people, some of their traditions, customs, and then you can do a good analysis or research on some of the origins of some of the things that seems to be causing Black folks around the planet stumbling blocks. So the question that I might want to start off with and asking you, my good brother, in your time that you spent over in Ghana, through words, linguistics, and things of that nature, because there's always an issue of people wanting to know about the Egyptian or Kemet background, or whether the Egyptians black, white, or things of that nature. Have you seen any evidence that kind of verify that connection? Because I ran across some research talking about the sub-Saharan migration west. So you ran across anything that substantiates that?
So, that topic was really settled back in 1974 at the UNESCO conference where Mam Sheikh Anta Diop and Nana Theophilo Benga, brought every kind of evidence that you can imagine. And, at this point, so I actually have a book that's set to come out really any day now called The Construction of Black Civilization. And it's, gone beyond, all right, were they Black? Like that's past done, to what did we do back then on the basis of our Blackness. And for example, if you look at the autobiography of Imafu Weni, he's talking about bringing together the ruler, rather, bringing together both sides of the house, Upper and Lower Kemet, and all of the Nahasyu, referring to the, so-called Nubians or Kushites. He refers to the Irjet Nahasyu, the Ka'au Nahasyu, Majai Nahasyu, and goes down the list. Basically, every kind of Black person brought together in order to drive out the Amu. And Amu refers to the non-Black Eurasians. So not only were they Black, now we're looking at what did they do on the basis of the Blackness. And what you'll find is that time and again, they would drive out these non-Black people from the land of Black people. There's another text called The Prophecy of Imahu Neferti. And I don't know, I can share my screen because the book is done. And, of course, I have a digital copy. You can actually look at the Medu Neter line by line and everything. Matter of fact, I actually just did a presentation at the Institute of African Studies, I believe it was early this month, right? On the same topic, where again, you can look at the prophecy of Imahu Neferti, and it talks about Ameni, who comes up from the south and built walls in order to trample the sand-faring Bedouins, right? So this is beyond their Black. It's like, well, what did they do on the basis of their Blackness? And one thing that they did was to build walls to keep these non-Black people out of the land of Black people. So that's another one. You also find a similar thing in the text called Sanhat, where, he talks about he made his way going north, and then eventually he came across those same walls of the ruler that were designed to trample the sand-faring Bedouins. And when he's talking about them, he's talking about those exact same type of Arab invaders who are in occupied Kemet right now, that back in the day, we actually built walls to keep them out of the land of Black people. But nowadays, they've overrun it to the point where you really have to go to places like Aswan before you start to really see a significant Black population. Again, you can go to text after text. You can look at the instructions from Sarahati to Merikare. And in that, he's talking about Lo, the miserable, talking about these same Eurasians. He's wretched because of the place that he's in. Short of water, bare of wood, his paths are many and difficult because of mountains. He goes about the desert on his 2 feet, looking for food, not conquering nor being conquered. He's like a thief in a community. He does not announce the day of combat. And basically, it's looking like because of the place that he's in, and it's basically like the quote unquote two cradle theory before the two cradle theory ever existed, thousands of years ago, saying like, look at their wretched environment, that lended itself to their wretched behavior, over time. And, if you look at these desert or glacier, tundra type of places where these Amu came from, then it becomes very clear why they're described in that way. So, even back then, we were trying to grapple with why do they behave the way that they do. Again, in that book, I'm actually going through a good, let's say, a good dozen or so texts that are just exactly showing, what it is that we're talking about. Now, in the presentation that I gave at African Studies, again, these are students who have little background, so I started off with the presentation. But matter of fact, if it's okay, can I share my screen? Because maybe
Absolutely.
that can.
Yes.
All right. I'll share my entire screen. I don't think I have audio, but just in case. And I can go to even slide share mode to go into this. But this is, the title of the book is called The Construction of Black Civilization, Volume 1. Of course, that's a nod to Nana Chancellor Williams, who has the book Destruction of Black Civilization. And essentially, what I'm doing is building upon that with primary evidence, in that every time that we kept our land as a land of Black people, we were able to maintain Ma'at. But as soon as these Amu came in, as always, because they are Isfetiyu, they bring death and destruction, rape and ravage, pillage and plunder. And this is, throughout time. So this is, classical times, you find Sarah, Seti, and then in contemporary times in Haiti, you can see a similarity between back in the good old days and then in more contemporary times. Nana Carter G. Woodson, every man has two educations, that which he, and of course that's a nod with 100 years of Black History Month, so that's why I added this in. That which is given to him and the other, that which he gives himself, of the two kinds, the latter is by far the more desirable. Indeed, all that is most worthy of man, he must work out and conquer for himself. It is that which constitutes our real and best nourishment. What we are merely taught seldom nourishes the mind like that which we teach ourselves. And, this is what the cover is going to look like, from back in the day to contemporary times. And you can see that this is not a new thing. A lot of people think, crackers only been cracking in contemporary times, but no, they were cracking way back in the day. And we had the same solution for it in recent times that we found in classical times. There's a song called Make Kemet Black. Again, this is good for the audio. I'll just play about a minute of this so you can hear what we're talking about.
Like that music.
Available on the BB2 Me exclusive.
Where the sun once rose so high through the sands where our stories lie. Echoes of greatness carved in stone. The black land whispers, we're never alone. We are the fire, the unbroken chain. We are the healers of ancient chains. They can make black again.
I see you out there not rocking over there.
So these are all photos that I took when I was in occupied Kemet. This is all of these are from 2016, right? And this one here, I would say she looks a lot like my wife, right? Kala. Kala is actually the word for black in Kikongo and associated with the words for charcoal. This is an image of Nefertiti. Most people have only seen the forgery bust of Nefertiti, but you had to go to the Egyptian Museum to see her with her actual features carved in stone, right? That's what the song was talking about, carved in stone. The Black Land Whispers, you're never alone. So, these are several rulers. This is Jehuti Mes, who they call Tutmos III here. Just all throughout. And, Menchu Hotep, Sarah Menchu Hotep. And these are all clearly Black people. But where it comes to them showing it, this is what they show. So most people only know Nefertiti bust made out of what they call plaster of Paris, and let's even pretend like it wasn't a forgery. I say, how come most have only seen this and they've never seen the actual stone carved one? Because look at the nose, look at the lips. If you see that, you'll know what you're looking at, right? But let's say this is Imhotep. They like to show illustrations as opposed to photographs. All of these forgeries, Baba Manu Ampim has a very good article on his site on the forgeries, and then Gods of Egypt, Prince of Egypt, all these. And the thing is, we all know when all these crackers started coming into the land of Black people. But the first 2,000 years, it was about keeping them out. So we said, will the real Nefertiti please stand up? So this is the real one, circa 1370 to 1330 BCE. This is the fake one that they composed 1911. And then they took the eye out to make it look a little bit more authentic, little cracks on the nose. So it's interesting, a couple of years ago, they came out with a video of specialists who make forgeries. And they're like, yeah, this is what someone who would do a forgery would do, where they'll break off the cobra here, but there's no damage to the nose. It's like if it fell over where the cobra would be destroyed, then there would be some damage, but it's just, let's do enough to make it look like it's old, right? And then again, this is a carving of Sarah Tutankhamun made by people who actually looked at his face, but then crackers say, let's make him look like an Arab invader who only just got there, you know, circa 639 CE, right? If you look at the text, you know, this is Hymn to Hanum that you'll find in the Esna text, and it talks about form all on his potter's wheel. This is her translation, Miriam Lickheim. But actually it says, if you actually look at it, it says form them of ochre, right? The mineral material from elephantine, brought among others as a material for little figurines. And here you're talking about silk. This is going to be the blackest sorrel that you get when you're talking about ochre. So even though she could clearly read, you know, the Metanetia where it says Nehepsen, Cheru, her, Nehepeth, which is formed in the sense of forming on a potter's wheel. Sin them, that's the sin. Cheru, that's the ochre. And again, you can find this, you know, in various dictionaries, right? Her, that's on. Nehepeth, that's his potter's wheel. And then again, you can find the use of the term Kim to refer to the blackness. So you can find this in the so-called Ebers Papyrus, where you have Amat Kemet, right? Again, this is agreeing for number and gender. So Amat being mud, and then Kemet being black mud, right? I'll continue. Again, you find mistranslations from crackers like Miriam Lickheim, where here it clearly says, here you see Kemet, you see man, woman, and plural. But the way she translates it, she says, he came and ruled the black land. But when you see man, woman, plural, this is referring to people. So what it really says is he came and ruled the black people. Now, those who only know how to read cracker, AKA English, they're going to miss this. And, you know, he came and ruled the black land. He came and nourished the black land. But again, here you see the cause, instead of being the causative, to give life or to cause life, F. And then, you know, here you have Kemetyu, right? He came and nourished the Kemetyu, referring to the black people. So this is what we refer to as academic malpractice and intellectual fraud, where they say the Egyptians have black skin and woolly hair, yet these two physical qualities do not suffice to characterize the Negro race. And Volney's conclusion, I'll tell you what Volney was saying, as to the Negro origin of the Egyptian civilization is evidently forced and inadmissible. This is Champollion, the brother of the one who is known for translating the Rosetta Stone. And then here's Samuel George Morton, this cracker said, Negroes were numerous in Egypt, but their social position in ancient times was the same as it is now, that of servants and slaves. But let's see if the primary texts agree with these Neanderthals. This is the Volney that he's talking about. So he says, this is Volney, a people now forgot to discover while others were yet barbarians, the elements of the arts and sciences, a race of men now rejected from society for their sable skin, that's talking about black people, and frizzled, that should be hair. This is from the PDF, founded on the study of the laws of nature, those civil and religious systems which still govern the universe. And this is, you know, the Morton and Champollion Figeac, they're doing what's called gaslighting. That's a form of psychological manipulation that seeks to sow seeds of doubt in a targeted individual or members of a targeted group, making them question their own memory, perception, and sanity, using persistent denial, misdirection, contradiction, and lying. And that's what Egyptology is institutionalized lying. It attempts to destabilize the victim and delegitimize the victim's belief, right? So again, this is the point that I make, that there's been a concerted effort, that this isn't by mistake, oh, are they black? Like, this isn't even a debate. Anyone who's debating that, they need to go back in their time machine to 1974 and take part in that conference. Here you see the term Ramech being used here, and this is how they depicted the Ramech, which is referring to the people of Kemet. And this, you see Amu, this is how they are depicted, and the Amu is the term used for the Hakau Hasut that are known as the Hyksos. And according to Manetho, those Hyksos, after they were driven out of the land of black people, they went on and found a town you may have heard of called Jerusalem. But nowadays, we name ourselves after every enemy that we've ever had, including the Hyksos who were driven by our, you know, Kemetyu ancestors. And these are the Chemhu, By this point in time, they had displaced those from earlier times, right? So here's Ramesh. You find two types in the tomb of Ramesu Meri Amen, also known as Ramesses III. Nahasu, you find two types there. And what's significant about this, as pointed out by Mam Sekhat Diop, is the people of Kemet depict themselves the same in terms of presentation as they depict the Nahasu, right? In terms of clothing, dress, all of this, right? But then the Amu, which are we want to say, oh, we're the real Hebrews, right? This is what those were depicted as. We call them Amu, the same ones who were driven out and went on to found Jerusalem. This is what they looked like back in the day. So when I presented this the first time at African Studies, I actually brought a mirror. I had a presentation that I did called "What Was Israel in Relation to Black People? The Danger of a Single Story." And I was like, all of you who think that you're the original Hebrews or Israelites, is this what you look like? And they had to just shake their heads no. And again, these are Chamhu. These are those same Amu who had then infiltrated and taken permanent positions west of Kemet proper, right? And again, you can find all of these in the Seth Lepsius. You'll find this in Gardner, Faulkner dictionaries, all of those. And then again, this is just an actual photograph, right? And you find, this writing, cha, man, woman, plural. And you'll find that on spiritual texts, they write it, backwards from what you would be used to seeing. Normally, you would read towards the glyphs, but in certain tombs, especially in spiritual texts, they write it, in another way where you're reading here, you're starting here, and then you're reading here. And again, this is the Ramesh. Let me come here. This is the Ramesh that you saw, cropped off here. But what's interesting is that you found crackers who will look at this, and this is from, again, Obinfo Manu Pim. So Hornum, this is an Egyptologist, mislabels a black skin group A as Nubians, even though the text clearly reads Ramesh, the Kemetiu, or the quote-unquote Egyptians. It is clear that Hornum both distorts and mislabels the scene and is not a reliable source in the Ramses III tomb scene. Frank Yurko also misrepresents the Ramses III scene in the same ways as Hornum. Yurko presents the same three distortions, and he mislabels the black skin group A as Kush, despite the textual evidence to the contrary. And that's what you just saw here in the photograph, Ramesh, not Nahasu. Mam Sekhat Diop, again, was dealing with this way back in the 70s. So, to debate anybody on this point is really a waste of your time. Like, anybody who needs it, you just tell them, go read what was written in the 70s. Meanwhile, we're going to look at what we did on the basis of us being black. So this is the melanin test. So the test involved the acquisition of specimens consisting of a few square millimeters of mummified skin, which were then coated with ethyl benzoate and exposed to natural or ultraviolet light. This procedure rendered the melanin granules in the skin specimen fluorescent, thus enabling them to be counted by Diop, who stated that the experiments show a melanin level which is non-existent in the white skin races. Let us simply say that the evaluation of melanin level by microscopic examination is a laboratory method which enables us to classify the ancient Egyptians unquestionably among the black races. He's literally counting melanin granules. And this is used for, burn victims to find out where these black people and so forth. DNA Tribes some years ago came out with the highest genetic match likelihood index of Sarah Tutankhamun and Sarah Amenhotep, and showed that their closest genetic relatives are in the Southern African region, Great African Lakes region, that's talking about Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, that area, tropical West African, Horn of Africa, Sahel, Levant, Aegean, Arabian, Northwest European, Mediterranean, North African. So the people used to be in what's called North Africa, but they are barely at all related to the people who are now in occupied Kemet. This means the vast majority of the people who used to live in Kemet migrated away. And again, this is how we actually depicted ourselves. And there's a reason why they don't show you photographs from Kemet, but they'll show you illustrations and Hollywood movies, because the gaslighting is all about, don't believe your lying eyes, believe my cracker PhD, right? Again, you've never seen a white man with lips. If you have, go and report that to, I don't even know what, Area 51 or wherever they deal with aliens, because that's not, anything natural. So look at the lips, look at the nose. Look at the lips, look at the nose. Look at the melanin, right? Look at the melanin. So this is me standing right here next to Sarah Tutankhamun. Continue. Ramesses III, we were just looking at the tomb scene of him. Here I am standing in front of this carving of him. And you see how he's depicted, right? Now, again, the gaslighting is, oh, even though he has black skin and kinky hair, that doesn't make him black. So all the, self-hating black people who are looking to escape the black race, you have your way out because having black skin and kinky hair isn't enough to make you black, apparently. Go ask the police department and find out, or go ask Chicago Police Department if that's enough to make you black. Apparently, we need to have the Egyptologist switch up with the police and have the police switch up to the Egyptologist in order to get an accurate identification. Because if you're black, they'll put out an APB for somebody who's 5'11" and 14 years old. They shoot somebody who's 76 and 6'2". They're like, oh, I just saw he was black, right? Again, Ramesses III, African Great Lakes, Southern African, Tropical West African, Horn of Africa, talking about Somalia, Sahel, North African. This means he's more closely related to black people in every part of the continent than he is to those who are there now. Right. So this is what it's showing, the current location of his relatives, by size, right? How close, right? And, when you have what they refer to as the quote unquote mural of the races, you can find contemporary analogs to what those people look like, right? And this is the one who we want to be. We read the Bible and we say, yeah, we're the real Israelites. Well, this is how those Amu were depicted back in the day after the Hyksos got their butts whooped, not in an exodus, but in an expulsion. This is what they look like. But that's what we want to be because we read imaginary Neanderthal fairy tales. So remember the quote from Sam George Morton where he says, oh, back in Egypt, they were servants and slaves. Well, this is the founder of Kemet, right? Heru Noma. Now, this is the ruler and founder of Kemet, and he looks like a young Mike Tyson, right? You can picture him knocking people out back in the day, right? So that's not a servant or a slave. Look at Nacheri Joseph, right? You can find you can see what the original skin tone was, even though it looks like they tried to sandpaper it off unsuccessfully. And you can see that he has locks, right? There he goes, right? So again, they said, oh, they were there, but they were only servants and slaves. Well, do the primary sources agree with you? No, that's how we know you're gaslighting. Mentuhotep II, right? Not a servant, not a slave, right? Again, a steady line of rulers. All of them are nothing but black people. And, basically what they're trying to do, you can picture that in 1,000 years, they'll say that Ghana was populated by nothing but Lebanese, because all they'll do is go and find some Lebanese who are here now and then say, oh, yeah, all of them were Lebanese. And it's like, well, no, let me show you the president of Ghana. Let me show you what Atab Mills looked like. Let me show you what Kufuor looks like. Let me show you what Muhammad looks like. Let me go down the whole list so you can actually see what the population of Ghana looked like. Because if you want to pick and choose and get the few infiltrators, then you're always going to be lost. So this is Yamos Nefertari. If that looks like a white woman to you, then I have a good, eye doctor who I can send you to, and we can get your blindness, treated. Because of course, even Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder can see that this is a black woman.
Hey, but Doc, question.
Yep.
The evidence is unrefuted, should be, of what you're showing, and we have to definitely send out some of our listeners who's listening via radio. You're gonna have to tune in to the link here to see some of the visuals that he's showing here. But we some of our own scholars. Maybe I'll say more of the Europeans. He was talking about the land. They was talking about the land. And what I found very interesting, I heard you said, you gave other instances where the people called themselves the land of the black people in other places and other languages. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's actually part of the presentation. So I can skip to that if you want to go past this, if you have more radio listeners and you feel like that'll be valuable. But all of that is actually right here in this presentation. So do you prefer I just skip to that point?
Well, some of the visuals, they, until we get to the other break side of the break, it'd be more visual. But right now we got audio and visuals, video people listening,
Okay, no problem. So I'll keep it brief for those who are more audio. So I'm showing Jehudi Mess, what they call Tutmos III, looking black as all outdoors. Amenhotep III with his afro and chin strap beard, nose and lips looking black as all outdoors. I'm showing, Queen T looking black as ever, showing Ramesses, so-called Ramesses II, showing Tutankhamun looking black as he needs to be, showing Amenhotep III and Ramesses II compared to Tutsis. And it looks like they literally just took a time warp, showing a Mangbetu woman and Akhenaten's daughter with the head elongation practices. And then again, showing contemporary Kemetiu and classical Kemetiu side by side. And it looks like just a photographic copy that they made on the ancient walls. So, when people ask, the main point that I was making in the presentation is that the idea of Black power Pan-Africanism isn't a modern day phenomenon. It's actually very classical. And, just to come directly to the point about the land, that one thing that the cracker Egyptologists miss is that in our own worldview, we would actually say that the people are made out of the Black soil, right? So they would say that's what you saw when it said made out of the potter's wheel, out of that Black soil. So they thought that they were going to, gaslight us or lie themselves. But what they did, they lied themselves right into a corner, because if you're saying, oh, it doesn't refer to Black people, it refers to Black land. Well, let's look at their mythology. They're saying that they're made literally out of that Black land. And again, here you find an individual calling himself Hepi Kim, Hepi Black, right? You find Henenit Kim, Henenit Black, right? And then you can also find this in the Coptic Bible, right? Where it says, some people may be familiar with the Song of Songs or the Song of Solomon, where it says, Anok ang okame alana shwe, amperta shwe ero e de ang okame anok. I am black but beautiful. Don't look at me because I'm black. You find that same Kim, that same Kame, has found its way into the last stage of the written language, which is Coptic. Obviously, any idiot knows that. And again, the key concepts of Blackness is to the point that you were asking about directly, that you find in classical times. And basically the point that I'm driving at is that you find in the pyramid text, we call ourselves Kemetiu, stand in front of the Kemetiu, like the Apis bull. And then individuals like Hepi Kim, Henenit Kim call themselves Black. And then again, here you find in the Bible, Coptic Bible, she's talking about, I'm Black, right? So she's not talking about soil. She's using the adjective Black to refer to herself, right? And then here, we're looking at Kemetiu, us referring to ourselves collectively as Black people. And then Kemet is referring to the land or nation of Black people. And then in Akan, here you have Obibini, where the root BB is coming from the same root as word BDA, which is a word for charcoal, which is very interesting because Kim is referring to a burnt piece of charcoal with flames coming out of the side. So the term that we use to describe ourselves is actually coming in classical Kemet from the word for charcoal. Same thing in Chi, right? Akan language, Chi dialect, Obibini, that the BB, and you also find that BB in the Songhai language, where it again translates to Black, and it's used as an all-purpose adjective for anything that is fertile, that's powerful, and that is pure, right? Again in Chi, Abibi4, Abibi9, Abibi and continuing on. In Yoruba, Adulawa. Now what's interesting here as well is we go right back to charcoal. In Yoruba, the word for charcoal is Edu, Edu. And the word that we use to call ourselves is Adulawa, which is literally like to say one who is Black in color, but really like one who is charcoal in color, right? And we refer to our land as Ilek, Adulawa, the land of those who are Black in color, literally. And Wolof, Nitkunyul, and Nitnunyul, plural, and then Real Nitkunyul as the land of Black people. Again, for those who can see the image, they can see very clearly why we call ourselves Black people. In Kikongo, we have the term Ndombe, right? Plural is Bandombe, Mandombe for the writing of Black people, and then Nsia Bandombe for the land of Black people. And then even the crackers are unanimous that they're not referring to the soil being Black, but Ethiopia, you're referring to the land of burnt faces coming from Ethi, burnt, and then Ups referring to faces. Here you have in the Latin language of the Romans, they would use the term Niger. That's where the contemporary countries of Niger and Nigeria derive their names. And that's the origin of Negro and a lot of other unsavory terms. And this is a depiction of Nana Hannibal looking black as all outdoors and an elephant crossing the Alps, for those who can see that. And then even the Arabs who are on occupied territory and occupied Kemet, they refer to this as Bilad as-Sudan, the land of the blacks. And that's where the contemporary countries of Sudan and South Sudan, get their names. So do you want me to go to anything else? Because I can continue through with the slideshow, or go to anything specific you want me to cover.
Actually, we need to step away for a few moments for a break. So we'll be gone for about a minute or so, and we'll be back. Just want to remind the listeners that you're listening to 360 Info Network right here on AM 1490 WERE. But we'd also like to invite you to join us on YouTube. You can go to my YouTube channel. You can also go to The Journey with Antonio, and you can see this fantastic information that Brother Obadele is sharing with us right now. It is a magnificent visual presentation. You'll be able to catch us on the other side of noon, live on YouTube, Facebook, and the 360 Info Network Facebook page. We'll be right back in just a moment. Stick and stay, and we'll be right back.
Cleveland has stories worth telling and voices that deserve to be heard. That's why the Cleveland Observer is proud to sponsor 360 Info Network with Vince Robinson and Antonio on AM 1490 WERE, where truth, culture, and conversation come together. Each week, host Vince Robinson and Antonio open the door to powerful discussions, from the arts and community history to the issues shaping our neighborhoods today. And the Cleveland Observer is right there with them, shining a light on the people and movements building a stronger Cleveland. Tune in to 360 Info Network and visit CLEobserver.com to read, watch, and share more stories that inform, inspire, and unite our community. Because together, we are Cleveland's voice.
Once again, the Cleveland Observer is the title sponsor of 360 Info Network. They're doing great work in the community, and we are happy to have them with us. If you're just tuning in, you are listening and watching 360 Info Network on Facebook and YouTube. Our guest is Obadele Cambone. He is over in Ghana. He told us he's in the Eastern region, and he's bringing us a presentation that links Ghana and Kemet and giving us the history of Black folks in civilization. Again, we're pleased to have him with us, and we're pleased to have you with us as well. Don't forget, when you go to our channels, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you will get notifications when we post content. So again, thanks for joining us, and we'll now get back to the presentation with Brother Obadele.
Because basically the point I'm going into now is that a lot of people think that the gaslighting and the lying of Egyptology is because they don't want us to know about our glorious past and things like that. But actually, the point of the gaslighting is that they don't want us to know that back in the day, we called ourselves Black people and we united on that basis to whoop their non-Black behinds. So if you want, I can go directly into that. And again, I want to show, the evidence of that. Are we good, or any requests?
Yes.
All right, great. So I'm gonna switch back to slideshow mode. So, again, most people think, and I would say a lot of the research on Kemet has been on our past glory, right? The world's oldest mathematical text, the world's first medical text, the world's largest pyramid, the world's first writing system, world's first known multi-genius, Imhotep, the world's first monumental stone structure, the world's first female ruler, Nesu Biti Sobek Neferu Ra, the world's first female physician, Imahut Pesachet, world's first unified nation, and all these things. And they don't want us to know that we had past glory. If only we knew we had past glory, we would get good self-esteem and, whatever is supposed to happen after that. But the point that I make is that that's really not at the core of it. And the point of it is what I'm uncovering in the book, The Construction of Black Civilization. So, my conceptual framework, Nana Asa Hilliard dealt with the Kemetic chronology. One issue with that, I think it was very well done, but one issue is that it continues to view time as a line, right? Whereas our ancestors, this is actually a quote from a conversation between a man and his Ba, where it says, life is a cycle, right? And you find this contemporarily in Eria Nepie and Natoye, which is the sun's rise and setting, right? And you find this as which is creation and life are twins. You find this, when you find Mahin, which is a snake with its own tail in its mouth. You find this in Damba Da Edo Hedo as a snake with its own tail in its mouth. You find this in the Dikenga and the hourly time segmentation system. So again, you find this throughout from classical times up to contemporary times. So if we understand that time is a cycle, then we need to view. Again, you find this is at the temple of Abu Simbel, where it says Asir rests as Ra, it is Ra who rests as Asir. So here you find basically the same thing that you find on the Dikenga. I continue. So my methodology of evaluating the text and even selecting the text was on the basis of, these 12 evaluative criteria, and then the Kanbandom's 3 R's. How does it relate? How is it relative? And how is it relevant to Black liberation? So, essentially in all of the texts that I'm looking at, I find that we call ourselves Black people. We call our land Black people and maintain the integrity of it as such. We expand to where other Black people, phenotypic Black people are located. We engage diplomatically or militarily internal to our own land. We engage diplomatically and or militarily with others who qualify phenotypically as Black people, but who do not self-identify as such. That's the Nahasiu. And also provide an understanding of the nature of others who qualify phenotypically as Black people, but do not self-identify as such. But then so that's on the internal side. Now on the external side, we identify non-Black people from what is now known as Eurasia as foreigners to the land of Black people. And the term was Amu, non-Black foreigners from anywhere on the continent now known as Eurasia or Eurasians for short. We identify their land as foreign land of Ta and Amu, land of foreigners, or Sechet, Eurasia, and restrict them to that land. We prevent those foreigners from encroaching on Kemet, the land of Black people. If and when they do enter, we crush them militarily. If and when they do enter, we drive them away. And then also we have texts that provide an understanding of their nature of Amu from the Ta and Amu, the land of foreigners, or Sechet, Eurasia for posterity. And then I had 3 research questions that guided my study, which were, if the Kemetu self-identified as Black, so that's already a given. We're not debating anybody on this. Anybody who is retarded enough to still be dealing with that question, just send them to the insane asylum and, put a straitjacket on them because they're no use to anyone. They probably didn't even, need to be born. So if the Kemetu self-identified as Black and they did, what did they think, say, and do internally with others who also self-identified as Black people, right? So that's what you find in rows 1 through 2 out of the table that I just shared with you. If the Kemetu Black people self-identified as Black and they did, what did they think, say, and do in relation to others who phenotypically qualified as Kemetu Black people but did not self-identify as Black people, nor did they have allegiance to Kemet, namely the Nahasiu, so-called Kushites and Nubians, right? And then also looked at if the Kemetu self-identified as Black and they did, what did they think, say, and do in relation to those who are not phenotypically Black, the Amu, right? And then 4, this is the one that makes this study relevant to us today, which is based on the answers to questions 1, 2, and 3 above. What should Black people do psychologically, culturally, economically, educationally, health-wise, spiritually, socially, and politically in contemporary times? So if we know that in classical times, anytime these Amu tried to come in, we would build walls to keep them out. Well, what should we do now militarily and on that basis? If we know that anytime they tried to come in, we would drive them out or we would crush them militarily, what should we do now? If we understand that we're always trying to bring more Black people into Kemet, well, what does that tell us in terms of what we should be doing right now? So this is my father's analytical framework of the 3 R's. And he says, the African goal, GOAL, GOLD standard by which we measure anything and everything we think, say, and do, everything we do has to relate, be relative, and be relevant to Black liberation. So every text we're examining in terms of how does it relate to Black liberation, how is it relative to Black liberation, and how is it relevant to liberation. Otherwise, it needs to be put in the ash can of history, to quote Nana John Henrik Clarke. So again, if you look at the Heru-Narmer palette, and this is an innovative analysis of the Heru-Narmer palette. So most people would be familiar with this. A lot of people consider this to be a document that shows the unification of Kemet. What I analyze it as is as the eradication of the non-Black Amu who had encroached into the Delta region. Why? Because look at how the Black people are depicted. They're depicted with afros. Any of us who have, any Black people who have been children realize that this is how we draw afros, right? You got to just shape this, and then you put the dots in there, the chin strap beard. These are the Black people. And what you find is the Black people, they have actually they have captured and held captive these Amu who are depicted as beasts. Otherworldly, unnatural beasts is how they're depicted. And then all of the Amu who are depicted, look at the difference in the hair of Black people versus this stringy fur of these Amu, right? Both on the head and the beard, right? So the Black people are depicted with these chin strap beards like how we still do for our lineup today, whereas the Amu are depicted with these stringy, furry type of things. And this one has a fish hook going through his nose. And this represents a clump of papyrus, right? Or papyrus, as some people would say. And this means that those Amu had encroached into the Delta region that has those papyri, and they have been finally subdued by Heru in the form of a falcon, and he's, yanking this fish hook through their nose. Here, you find another singular, and look at how the furry, type of hair is depicted here. And, this is very similar to what we were depicting in IT as we showed on the book cover earlier, right? Now, let's look at these otherworldly beasts. These are beasts that come from Mesopotamia, which is where these particular Amu found their origin. So it's saying, what this is showing you is that the Black people have finally gotten those Amu under control. And again, this is a Jasper cylinder seal, monstrous so-called serpopards and lion-headed eagles from Mesopotamia during the Uruk period. You're talking about 4,100 BCE through 3,000 BCE. And again, all of these Amu are depicted as either dead or dying, right? So here's another one with the stringy fur, stringy furry beard, and he's being trampled by the bull, which again represents the ruler, Karnak, which is the victorious bull, right? Strong bull. Now look at the difference in terms of how Black people are depicted. Here, this is what are known as free-form locks. So that's completely different from the stringy fur that you found there. So this is one of the victors, right? Chet depicted with 4 large free-form locks behind the shoulder. All of these brothers here, they got afros, and then you find these ones who got locks, right? So the back afros and then the locks here. And then they're also carrying what you still find in Ghana, which are the achiampoma. They refer to these as the staff of the spokesperson, so-called linguist staffs. Meanwhile, all of the Amu have had their heads cut off and they're decapitated. So anyone who's reading this document, right, this historical document as a document of unification, how do you unify with every single person has been killed or is about to be killed, right? And again, these are the Amu, and this is how we dealt with the Amu back in the good old days. So 2 rows of defeated foes with their decapitated heads placed between the legs of their corpses. So again, this is where the table that I showed earlier comes into play. So again, we either call ourselves Kemetiu or we depicted ourselves as such in our iconography. That's very clear on the Heru-Narmer palette. We engage diplomatically internal to our own land. And again, here we're seeing that we came together militarily and diplomatically in order to do what? To crush the Amu. And on this side, we find, again, we identify them as Amu and we depicted them as such. We prevented them from encroaching into Kemet. If and when they do enter, we crush them militarily. If and when they do enter, we drive them away. And there are some who look at the Heru-Narmer palette. I'm going to go back for those who are they look at this lower register on the Heru Narmer palette as they're either dead and sprawled on the ground, or they have been put to flight, meaning that they've been driven away, right? So crushed militarily or driven away. To come back to the table, when they do enter, drive them away, and then again provide an understanding of the nature of Amu. And from the Heru Narmer palette, they are presented unequivocally as the enemies of the Kemetiu, the Black people. And I already showed you an image of what Heru Narmer looks like. He looks like a young Mike Tyson ready to knock somebody out with a peekaboo style, right? Another text is that of Hatia Emi Shamau Emi Set Sao Nahen Harry Tep Nechev Samir Wat Weni, foremost of the local, this is his full titulary, foremost of the local ruler, superintendent of the upper Kemet, one who is in the palace, guardian of Nechen, uppermost of Necheb, sole companion Weni. This is the actual document. This is the primary source, what it looks like. And again, this is a depiction of him in his youth with a little afro, right? You don't find no crackers looking anything like this who have nose, lips, and an afro. And now we're going into the primary text, and this is the core of the book that I have called The Construction of Black Civilization again. And it says, his servant drove away the Amu, foreigners from Eurasia. And here, this is what this is written as, Amu, right? His servant made, and when they say his servant, this is how we refer to the ruler. The exact same word that's used for servant is the word that's used for the ruler. Now, crackers like to translate this as his majesty because their brains can't wrap their head around that the ruler, the overall ruler, is the number one servant of the Netru, specifically Heru, right? So him, and there's a proverb in Chi that says, one who wants to be a ruler should learn service ahead of time, meaning that the ruler is the number one servant, right? Yeah. One of the Netru, two of the people, and anyone who loses sight of that will be destilled immediately and will be consigned to oblivion. So again, his servant drove away the Amu sand dwellers. His servant made, recruited an army of many tens of thousands from all of Upper Kemet. That's Shemau. And again, looking at my methodology for translation, what I'm doing is essentially doing a interlinear translation. I give you the transliteration first, so I give you the meta-neture, then the transliteration, and then the interlinear gloss that shows each and every morphemic component, right? And then from there, I go into, the free translation, or the gloss like that. And basically, with this, methodology, anyone can pick up this book and actually use it as a textbook for learning meta-neture, because you can see that this is a complementizer. Could extent. This is third person singular masculine possessive. That's south. Abu, right? Mahit, Medinit, right? So like from the extent of Abu in the south to Medinit in the north. From the land of marshes, lower Kemet, like the extent of the two sides of the house. And from Sejer and Ken Sejeru, and from Irjet Nahasyu. So this is talking about all the Black people. So first he brought everybody from the south and the north, from the east and the west of Kemet. But then he brought together all of the Black people, including those who are referred to as Nubians or Cushites. And from Sejer and Ken Sejeru, from Irjet Nahasyu, Majad Nahasyu, Yam Nahasyu, Wawat Nahasyu, Kau Nahasyu, and from Chimeland. And what this is telling you is that this is the first Pan-African military force, and it happens to show up in the very first narrative military document in the history of the world, right? Hey, very significant.
We want to lose our audio listeners, but before we do that and cross over into our stream, could you give them a way of, if they're interested in getting the book when it's come out, could you give a quick minute on before we transition over how they can get the book and things like that?
Yeah, we got about 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Oh.
So our publisher is African World Books out of Baltimore. So it's actually supposed to be going to the printing press even today. I'm expecting, so people can check it out from there. And also we'll make it available on Abibitumi and then also on my personal website. So we'll be taking pre-orders, most likely from as soon as next week for those who are interested in the book. So very, very significant. One of the most, in my opinion, significant books on Kemet in the last 2,000 years. And it's actually showing you, like I said, word for word translations. So anybody who's like, oh, you know what? I don't think that they were trying to keep these crackers out. They can actually go and read the text themselves, pick up a dictionary, and then they can see exactly what each and every single word is saying and verify, because that's what it's all about. So again, the book is Construction of Black Civilization, and check it out.
Okay. The book is The Construction of Black Civilization, and it has been written by Obadele Cambone, a scholar and linguist over there in Ghana. We're pleased to have him with us, and continue to check us out on YouTube and Facebook. You can go to The Journey with Antonio. You can also go to my YouTube channel, and you can check out our broadcast there. Just want to give a shout out to our engineer, Tone Harley, once again, for making this possible for us to do this international broadcast today. We appreciate him and what he does for us, and we appreciate you for listening. Don't forget, check us out on YouTube. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your absolute best day, everyone. Peace.
Peace, peace.
All right, it's 12 o'clock noon right here on YouTube and Facebook, 360 Info Network Facebook page. Also, The Journey with Antonio. And also, you can go to Vince Robinson 3193 on YouTube, and you can check us out there. We are having a fantastic presentation brought to you by the scholar who is in our midst today, coming to you from the eastern region of Ghana. Brother Antonio is in Accra, which is in the central region of Ghana. And poor me, I'm over here in
It's in the greater Accra region. It's in the greater Accra region. Central region is Ogwa, they call Cape Coast. I know myself.
Thanks for the correction. My brother is in Accra. I'm in Mexico. I'm toughing it out with, what's happening over here. And it's all good. You know, it's funny. Before I came over here, I was getting a lot of, well wishes and safe travels. And you going to Mexico? And I'm like, yeah, Mexico. Folks over here living their lives like they do every day. It's all good. But we're pleased to have Brother Cambone with us today. And if you didn't know that there was a connection between Ghana and Kemet, now you know. We're getting the full rundown on what it means to be Black. So please continue to share and continue to embellish what we need to know about our history.
Yeah, we're getting a good history lesson. If y'all didn't get a chance to go through a Black History Month lecture, you're getting it now.
Yeah. And let me add, Brother Cambone brought up Manu Ampim, who was with us last week. We got Woodson, and we talked about Africa extensively and the interest that the scholar Carter G. Woodson had with Africa. So this is all relevant, and I'm pleased to know that you know Brother Ampim, because he does travels to Kemet, and he gives folks the real history over there outside of what the Egyptian guides are giving, because they're sanitizing it, they're whitewashing it. They're attempting to change our history, which is really not in the
But if anything, I would say is they're definitely unsanitizing it. They're dirtying it. They are, people say brainwashing. I say they're brain dirtying it. And, and we're getting it back out of their hands, because they're obviously not capable of keeping, it in its, sanctity that it needs to be, essentially.
Yeah. Yes.
Pronunciation of my name, Obinfo, you're good with that, but it's Obadele. So if you look at it's a Yoruba name, but most people in the U.S. have a difficult time pronouncing it because there aren't really too many words that, sound like that. So is mid-tone, right? And you see the dot under it, that lets you know it's an open O sound. And then you have 3 high tones. Ba, de, ble. Most people, when they read it, they say Obadele. That's what, growing up, most people would say. They'll say Obadele. They'll say everything other than it, because they've never heard a word that has 3 high tones in succession. But that's exactly what it is. So it's Obadele, just like that. So you have to.
I got you.
Sing it.
Yeah, Obadele. Obadele, I got it. All I
That's
needed
it.
was to hear you say it. Now that I've heard you say it, I'm good.
A lot of people who have, especially my parents got the name out of a name book. And a lot of people got both my first name and my last name out of the exact same name book. I have it on my shelf. My father wrote some notes in the margins that this is going to be my son's name. But growing up, nobody knew how to pronounce it correctly. So that's actually my main reason for learning Yoruba, of which I've been teaching since around 2003 or 4 at the university level. But the first question that I had in Yoruba class is, how do I say my name right? And that was it. And when I did my PhD defense, the first question that my external examiner asked me was to give a linguistic breakdown of my name. So Oba translates to quote unquote king. And then you have what's referred to as an autosegmental tone. So the high tone O, Oba, O, De, Ile, it translates to the king. He arrives at the house. So that O is elated, but the tone is still there, and that's why it shows up on the I in Obadele. So we can go more into that. And then the last name is Kambon. 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 Just like that.
Kambon. Right. All right. This kind of leads into my next question. I definitely wanted you to expound on it a little bit, because I'm right with you on this. You classified it, or you gave it a term of colonization of spirituality. That's what we're a victim to. Could you kind of explain and what you mean by that when you say colonization of spirit? Because I know how, and you gave an example of the use of SNOPs, and how we are financing other folks because of our how we mend or incorporate other people's culture into our way over time. So I guess therefore bringing that colonization of spirituality. Could you explain that?
Yeah, definitely. And matter of fact, what I'll do, let me even share this with you, because I have some images to go along with that. So bear with me as I pull it up. So I actually just presented this at the University of Ghana. There was a seminar that was there, basically a conference that was there, where it was on spirituality, the National Association of Traditionalists and Ancestral Venerators. And, essentially, I refer to it as the political economy of African spirituality's material culture, tools of liberation or traps of enslavement. Basically, the idea is that most of us went to our own spiritual systems because we were looking for a tool of liberation. But as soon as we get there, we find nothing but schnapps, which is this liquor that comes from the Netherlands. We find tobacco, we find baby powder that's carcinogenic. So let me just, I'll go to slideshow mode on this really quick. Very good. And I'll go straight into it. So again, that's the point I'm making. Liberation is often, for those of us in the diaspora, we also look at liberation as a reconnection with our spiritual systems, right? We look at all these cracker religions, Neanderthal religions. We say, those aren't where it's at. We need to get up out of there. How can a slave and master both worship the same God, then expect their prayers to be answered by that same, imaginary crack in the sky? So it's not just Christian sanity, it's Christian sanity, it's slime, and Judaism, all of those cracker religions and more. And so when you look at these hinky snaps, right?
In this country to do the wrong.
Dr. Amos Wilson.
We say we are free. What is freedom we say? Freedom to do what we want to do. But stop the minute and think. What makes you want to do what you want to do? You might come to realize then that our very wants and our very desires have been what? Induced. So that the things we really want and the things we really desire are those things that maintain the system and are those things that destroy us as a people. But yet we objectively weren't speaking about it because we see our indulging in them as some expression of our what? Freedom. In this system, when you so-called let people free, and yet you must maintain them in subordination. They must then, with their freedom of choice, always choose the wrong thing. You give them a foolish pride into thinking that since they have choice, they are therefore free. A very slick system. It induces the captive African to behave in such a way such that he will economically and otherwise and apparently of his own accord support the European establishments to the detriment of his own without being conscious of his doing so.
Very good. So those who are watching, you can see exactly what we're talking about. So the main three things, even though I could have gone into more, the main three things I was looking at was the schnapps, which is this cracker liquor that the Dutch brought in here. Looking at the tobacco, because you'll find the abosom who are smoking cigarettes, and then the baby powder, of which Johnson & Johnson was sued for well over $1 billion. I think it was getting to like $2.1 billion or so, after it was uncovered that this baby powder is carcinogenic, and they knew it was carcinogenic, but they kept selling it specifically to Black people, right? So created taste and desires, again, we're quoting Nana Amos Wilson, where he says, why does a Black man say freedom is doing what I want to do? And why is it that everything that he, quote unquote, wants to do enriches the, quote unquote, European? When we observe who benefits from our interests, tastes, and desires, we will see who implanted those interests, tastes, and desires for their own ultimate benefit. So basically, you can follow the money trail. The one who benefits from it is the one who got you wanting it in the first place. And as soon as you can see that this person wants you to do something, you can project to how are they going to benefit from this, right? Again, you know, the essence of controlling people is to provoke a desire in them, and then, of course, have the control of the satisfaction of that desire. That is the foundation of the capitalist system and economic system. And he goes on to say, oppression rests on people going places and enjoying pleasures that destroy them, and who are excited by nonsense and bored by stuff that they should be learning. In this world where things are backwards, those who are oppressed must be made to feel freest when they are most enslaved. And again, that's Nana Amos Wilson. So Eurasians, this is a point that I'm making. So Eurasians and their progeny implanted something inside of us that has interests, tastes, and desires that ultimately benefit them. And then to quote Nana Amos Wilson again, in terms of the language, in terms of the food, the religion, the values, the social relations, the names, Nakadalika, that's and so forth and so on. So what is the political economy related to created tastes and desires in Ghana? So we can look at liquor, baby powder, cigarettes, perfume, because all of these are so-called implements of our spiritual systems. But if our brains even worked a little bit, we would realize they couldn't have been implements of our spiritual systems before these crackers got here. So that means that things that we're calling tradition cannot be tradition, because it means we had to abandon the tradition that we were doing before the crackers brought their liquor, before the crackers brought their baby powder, before the crackers brought their cigarettes and their perfume. And again, this is what I refer to as a colonization of the spiritual realm, right? So essentially it's replacing life with death, putting Isfet in the place of Ma'at. So the thing that used to bring about life is now bringing about death. So palm wine, the health benefits of this drink will amaze you. It contains an antioxidant, vitamin C. Vitamin C, on the other hand, helps in maintaining good eye health. So there's something that, in addition to that, you talk about the macrobiome, you talk about gut health and all this type of stuff. That, this is a fermented drink that actually has some of those benefits as well. However, all of that has been replaced. Well, let me not say all of it. A great majority of that, almost $500 million, has been replaced with all of this cracker liquor, across time. There's a proverb that says, which translates to one doesn't buy liquor to bless his enemy. However, that's exactly what we're doing. We're buying the liquor, and what they're doing is taking the money from those alcohol imports to build skyscrapers, to pave roads, to finance their healthcare system and everything else. So we're literally taking liquor to bless our enemies. And again, like we pour libation saying, we hope to defeat our enemies that I've just enriched with my money. Look at how insane that is, right? And again, something that used to bring about life in the form of palm wine is replaced with something that brings about death in the form of cardiac oral cavity, liver, gastrointestinal illnesses, neurologic, lung, muscle, pancreas, bone. All of these things are affected by the liquor, as well as, cancers, immune dysregulation cancers such as liver cancer, colon cancer, breast cancer, oral cavity, rectum cancer, all of those things from this cracker liquor that we're now told is supposed to be our tradition, right? And as a matter of fact, anytime you go to see a traditional ruler, you're supposed to bring at least 2 bottles of this liquor specifically from these crackers, to the point where if you bring one that's made by Black people, they'll turn you around and say, go get the real one from the crackers. Another one, burning incense. So you can find going all the way back to classical Kemet, this burning of incense. And it says this is a new class of antidepressants that may be right under our noses. Burning frankincense, resin from the boswellia plant, activates poorly understood ion channels in the brain to alleviate anxiety or depression. This suggests that an entirely new class of depression and anxiety drugs might be right under our noses, right? This is a study coming out of Johns Hopkins University. We continue. But that good smoke has been replaced with these tobacco products. And again, these are being imported to the tune of millions, right? Some 72 million USD. And a lot of that is going to the shrines where you're going to find the abosom. When the person gets possessed, they're now, smoking this stuff that we know very clearly is contributing to lung cancer, pancreatic cancer, and so forth and so on. So this has an impact on mood stimulation, anxiety and irritability, smelly hair, unhealthy teeth, bronchitis, persistent coughing, heart disease, high cholesterol, immune system, infertility, erectile dysfunction, diabetes complications, blood clotting, early menopause, poor vision, dull sense of smell and taste, lung cancer, everybody knows that one, constricted blood vessels, COPD, loss of appetite, yellow fingers, cervical cancer, wrinkly skin, problems with pregnancy and newborns, cancer, connection, increased risk of blood cancer. But here, look at all of them. Again, there's been something that's been implanted into them that says, I don't care if this smoke is going to destroy the host body. I want what I want. And then kaolin powder, right? So this is something, I remember some years ago, I was watching a documentary that talked about these toucans and certain types of parrots in the Congo, that they're able to eat berries that are poisonous. And then after they do that, they go to the riverside and then they eat this white clay that has adsorbent properties, where the poison will adsorb to those molecules and they'll actually be excreted out, and they have no problems. And this is something that's still used to this day in Ghana for stomach issues, food poisoning, and so forth and so on. So it's a type of clay found in nature. It can also be made in the laboratory. People use it to make medicine. And this is actually, if you remember growing up, well, for me growing up, there was a product called kale pectate. The kale in it is coming from this kaolin powder, right? So that was a stomach, issue. You got stomach issues, drink this kale pectate. The kaolin is the kale in it, and the pectin, which you can find in the seeds of apples and things like that. That's the pectate part of it. So it's used to treat diarrhea, relieve soreness, severe diarrhea, dysentery, cholera, so forth and so on, swelling inside the mouth caused by radiation treatments. All these types of things also used for treating ulcers, swelling, inflammation of the large intestine, so forth. But that has been replaced by the cosmetics to the tune of 7 million, of which the baby powder is a main source, because look at this. To have any type of spiritual experience, you're supposed to use this toxic poison that causes cancer, as admitted by Johnson & Johnson. So women with cancer awarded billions in baby powder suit. An appellate court in Missouri upheld more than $2 billion in damages against Johnson & Johnson, saying the company knew there was asbestos in its baby powder that causes cancer. That's the New York Times for anyone who's interested in following up on that article. So essentially what this breaks down to is we have what Mama Marimba Ani calls, she says we have cultural AIDS, I refer to as cultural linguistic AIDS, as a breakdown of the Black culture as immune system, right? So the analogy is that, here you have a healthy body with T cells, the virus enters, it starts reproducing itself. The immune system breaks down, the T cells cannot fight infections anymore, quote unquote, AIDS takes over. So, essentially any, in this idea of the Urugu virus, anything can come in, whether that's infections, germs, flu, virus, bacteria, disease, all those can come in. However, we're immune to other things that are, by other Black people. So the point that I'm making is that you'll find the people in Ghana are more than willing to import all this cracker stuff. But if you say, oh, you know what, instead of practicing Christian sanity, why don't you practice Yoruba spirituality? They will look at you like you done lost your mind. So the only two options are forward towards America or backwards towards the village, and that's it. They can't look sideways. They can't look circumspectually around, all right, well, how are we doing it in Togo? How are we doing it in Cote d'Ivoire? How are we looking, in Congo? How are we doing in Senegal? Let's look at the best of what we have in order to do our spiritual systems. The only thing you can pull from is what you happen to find in your village and what the crackers have brought into you. So again, we stay independent from each other, and this is the analogy, right? So you have, this is the analogy by Baba Omoale, where, if you have this coffee that when it's black, it wakes you up, you infiltrate it or integrate cream into it. Now it used to wake you up, puts you to sleep, right? So we all stay independent from each other. Meanwhile, any cracker cream can come in, but we can't mix and blend the coffees, right? So Baba Omoale, we just observed the 21st of February in his honor. He says, of all of our studies, history is best qualified to reward our research. And when you see that you've got problems, all you have to do is examine the historic method used all over the world by others who have problems similar to yours. And once you see how they got theirs straight, then you'll know how you get yours straight, right? That's from Message Grassroots. And then just on that same thing of protectionism, that what you do is you prevent all this cracker liquor from coming in, the cracker tobacco from coming in, the cracker baby powder from coming in, and you'll be a lot healthier from that. And that's what every intelligent nation has ever done that ever became a world power. Every single last one did that. If you want to talk about United States of a murderer, you want to talk about Japan, you want to talk about South Korea, you name it. And, again, this is a quote from Mama Marimba. She says, your culture is your immune system. So she says, culture is a means by which a people protect themselves. We can understand culture as the immune system of a people. Culture is that immune system, right? The virus is a Urugu virus that results in a condition of cultural AIDS, right? That's when anything can come in. But according to Nana Amilcar Cabral, he says the best way to fight an alien culture is to live your own. There's a proverb in Chi that says, serving yourself is not enslavement. So you can basically chart every thought, idea, and word that you do. This is another idea that my father had as part of the Kanban Dharma, where you can actually look at how everything that comes across your plate relates to Black liberation, is relative to Black liberation, is relative to Black liberation, whether it's in alignment with Ma'at or in alignment with Isfet, which is misalignment. So again, the Kanban Dharma, this is how I actually have a bookcase on the other side that has everything broken down along the lines of the Kanban Dharma. So this shelf is psychology, this shelf is culture, this shelf is economics, this shelf is education, this shelf is social, this shelf is religion/spirituality, this shelf is politics, this shelf is health, and then everything on this shelf is confusion and diversions, meaning a version of death, a diversion. And, to quote Nana Amos Wilson, once again, he says, if you want to understand any problem in America, and we can expand that beyond just America, right? He says you need to focus on who profits from that problem, not who suffers from the problem. And again, these are our research questions we can ask. Who originates a given thought, word, behavior, or social interaction? Who benefits from the thought, word, behavior, or social interaction? What is the ultimate objective of the Black people and of non-Blacks? What are the consequences for Black people and non-Blacks? Is it moving towards Abibi Fahudi, Black liberation, or Abrafun Sheso, Eurasian oppression? And this is a deeper analysis than tradition versus modernity conundrum. So what most people will just analyze it as is, oh, the schnapps is modernity, and that's different from tradition. Others will say, oh, the baby powder, that's modernity, and the Carolyn powder is tradition. So we're moving on towards modernity. It's like, no, that's not even the question. That's a dumb question. Again, they say you ask stupid questions, you get stupid answers. That's a very dumb question. You need to go deeper in terms of who actually benefits economically from the thing, as opposed to is it qualified as tradition or is it qualified as modernity? Because there are certain things that are quote unquote modern that Black people make. So for example, my phone here is made in Burkina Faso. So that's quote unquote modern. But again, who originates it, who benefits from it, what's the ultimate objective, that these are things that are beneficial to Black liberation as opposed to all the cracker type stuff. So again, you can chart it and you can give yourself points, right? So chart the activities of Black World Terror dominators and that of the community and yourself every second of every day in every area of life activity. At the end of the day, add up the scores and see how you have done relative to either supporting or working to defeat the white terrorists while at the same time measuring your efforts to liberate the community and yourself. And on that note, I'd like to invite both of you to Abibi Tumi, which is the Black Social Education Network. When you took a break, you mentioned every cracker platform in the world. You mentioned YouTube and Facebook and all those things that are owned by our
Okay.
personal invitation to you. Our last demonstration over conversation. So it's useless for us to learn all of this information I'm sharing with you today and to continue to enrich Master Mark Zuckerberg and all these crackers. So I'm not telling you have to give it up entirely, but at the very least, I would love to see a presence on a Black platform. So
Absolutely.
Again, Black student, and we'll work out how we can make that happen as soon as possible. You can actually just download the app as you're sitting here right now. And by the end of Black.FACTS, so we're looking at the crossroads of spirituality as Black liberation or a different face on economic enslavement by Eurasians. So to quote Nana Kwame Nkrumah, he says the essence of neocolonialism is that the state which is subject to it is in theory independent and has all the outward trappings of international sovereignty, and reality its economic system and thus its political policy is directed from the outside. So it's very clear to see how Christian sanity is directed from the outside. It's very, except for the people who are mentally ill who say, oh, that's really a Black people's religion. It's easy to see how its slime is directed from the outside. It's very easy to see how Judaism is directed from the outside. But then you'll think, okay, well, let me get rid of those and let me come to our own spiritual systems. But meanwhile, you come to schnapps and tobacco and baby powder and you'll go to a shrine. Okay.
Yeah, but okay, my good brother, I'm gonna ask you a question on, and that some people may look at this. They say, okay, I got snobs, or I'm using this, I'm using it. What's the big deal? Some people say, and I think we need to just make a footnote right here on why it's important. Just say like I talk to some people and I talk about the holidays. And I'll call myself anti-establishment. I think we need to relearn everything. I don't believe in nothing that this man is giving us. And what you said, brain dirty, not brainwashing, but I think, we have to come to that conclusion and understand what exactly have taken place. But I don't think people know, like during the Christmas or those time frames, because our people was very spiritual and everything had a meaning and a purpose. So by us doing and celebrating and consciously and subconsciously doing those things, how is that affecting us as a people?
Yeah, so, again, if you read the oldest book, let's say oldest surviving book in the history of humanity, you're looking at the instructions of Chati Imi Ur Nut Patahotep, where it says, he who listens to his belly belongs to the enemy. You can find even more recently, Nana Thomas Sankara said something similar, where it said, he who feeds you controls you. There's a proverb in Chi that says, if you eat in 30 houses, your mouth isn't hard, which means you cannot criticize those who help you. That if the Okomfo is foolish in his or her bosom has also become foolish. And basically, if you yourself have a taste and desire for that which enriches your enemy, then you're going to basically put that on any abosom that you deal with, to the point that they start asking for it. There's no abosom who asked for schnapps before the Dutch came here to what they called the Gold Coast at that time. There was not one single abosom who was asking for baby powder. There was not one single abosom who was asking for cigarettes or candy. You'll go into a shrine, they say, oh, look at all these candies on the shrine. They love that. There's not a single one. So if not a single one was asking for it back then you have to ask yourself, what entity are you dealing with now that only wants all this cracker stuff? I've been in a shrine and I look around, the only thing that's made by Black people are the couple of Black people who are sitting in the shrine themselves. Everything else, they ask for white calico cloth that's imported. They ask for schnapps. They ask for candy. They ask for all this cracker stuff. So again, it's enriching. And again, Imahut Patahotep was very clear on this, where it says, he who listens to his belly belongs to the enemy. Essentially what Nana Amos Wilson was saying about taste and desire. So that's what's the big deal about it. And Chi, you would translate that as that if you listen to your belly, you become that of the enemy. So essentially, if you are manipulated into a culture of desiring that which enriches your enemy and destroys you, literally destroys your health, right? And your children, you must resist and reverse that culture. So even in spirituality, or what's put forth as our spiritual systems, we must produce what we consume and consume what we produce. Anything else is neo-enslavement dressed up as Abibi Fahundi, Black liberation. And not everything that we happen to find Abibi for, that's Black people on the continent doing right now or in the past, is indigenous and or a tool for Abibi Fahundi and the restoration of Ma'at. So that's what the big deal is if you come to our spiritual systems looking for liberation and you find them doing things that enslave us on multiple levels, then, at the very least, we need to start wondering, they talk about brain drain. We have to ask ourselves, were our brains drained out of our heads to even forget that the reason why we came to it in the first place is to get free from their, religions of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, and all this other, garbage that they've palmed off on us. So
I see.
That's the big.
I'll run some by you real quick. Well, first we got to give honor, because I seen a couple of videos and you really give honor to your father. Tell me about your father and that relationship, real briefly if you can. I don't want to take too much time, but I want to give you the opportunity because it seemed like your father was very influential in your life.
Absolutely. And what I'll do, let me even do this. I'll share my screen. We did a documentary movie honoring my father, and it's called Quiet Warrior. So before I say anything, I'll just play briefly the trailer for that. And then I'll, share a little bit with you, on who my father was and who he still is, to me as an individual, and then also to the Black race as a person. Quiet Warrior trailer. And let me know if you can see my screen when I do this.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it yet.
Not yet? Okay. 1 second. I need to share audio as well when you come back. Entire screen, also share system audio. There we go. All right, can you see my screen now?
It's coming up.
Okay, got it.
All right, Black Tassie.
I am Kamau Kamban. There's a priestess from Ghana that gave me a name, Kwesi Ajaman. And Kwesi Ajaman translates to Savior of the Nations. So as Kamau Kwesi Ajaman Kamban, I greet you with the words Black liberation, Abibi Fahodie. Abibi Fahodie is from Ghana, a tree word, which translates to Black liberation. And Black liberation is our African gold standard. That's GOALGOLD. So I greet you with Black liberation. Miles Davis, the great trumpet player I mentioned earlier, has an album, Live in Paris. And I think on that album, he says, he whispers with his raspy voice, "This is your life." And so I'm giving you a sweep of my life. I didn't start with this understanding. I didn't start out like this. I started out playing, roller skating, playing skelly and stickball and all that. I never even thought about Black liberation. Over the years, I developed, I evolved. The more you de-whitenize, the closer you become to the pure spirit that you should be. And the closer you get to that pure spirit, the closer you get to Black liberation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the trailer, actually. And now I'm going to share just this intro, maybe like a couple of minutes to the documentary itself.
We are gathered here to honor the memory of Baba Kamal Kambon, a quiet warrior, a man whose life embodied the Akan proverb, life is war, family is an army. Baba Kambon was consistent, unwavering in his commitment to African people. He was assured of who he was, a pillar of strength and integrity. Family was at the core of everything he did, a testament to his belief in the unity and power of a strong, cohesive, familial bond. He went beyond merely professing his ideas. He lived them, teaching us that our beliefs must be in sync with our behavior. Baba Kambon knew that victory lies in the details and was always prepared, surrendering his will to the wisdom and guidance of his ancestors. In a world full of explanations of the problem, Baba Kambon chose to be a living demonstration of the solution. He taught us to let our beliefs be seen before they are heard, embodying the essence of true leadership. Today, as we remember Baba Kambon, we honor a man who will always remain our quiet warrior. His legacy will live on in our hearts and actions, guiding us to live with the same integrity and dedication he exemplified through his life and legacy. Rest in power, Baba Kamal Kambon.
All right.
The other thing is that there's only one nigger on the planet. I never use that word. This is the first time I've used it. I don't even think that word, but there's only one nigger on the planet. And the nigger that's on the planet is the one that is destroying the water, the one that's polluting the air, the one that is exploiting people and resources. And the only nigger on the planet is the white man and the white woman. And then our people are not niggers. We are imitation niggers. Now, what we have to do is we have to devise a system or a plan for ourselves. And I said earlier that each one of you is a system. And everything that you do, every thought that you think, either you are supporting white world terror domination by your actions, what you buy, what you wear, where you go, what you eat, how you use your time. You are either supporting the white people in their process of death, or you're for African liberation. It's one or the other. And if we don't use our time wisely, then we are engaging in a form of subtle suicide. Because as I said earlier, their system is still going on. They still have these images on TV that are going on. They're still warehousing our children in the special ed, giving them Ritalin. There's no jobs. We fill in the hospitals. So their system is not stopping. And then finally, I want to say that we need one idea. And we're not thinking about a solution to the problem. We're dealing with all these other things, but these are diversions from the solution to the problem. And we have to start to think about a solution to the problem so that these young brothers and sisters who are here now, who are 15, 16, and 17, are not here 25 years later talking about these same problems. Now, how do I know that the white people know that we are going to come up with a solution to the problem? I know it because they have retina scans, they have what they call racial profiling, DNA banks, and they're monitoring our people to try to prevent the one person from coming up with the one idea. And the one idea is how we are going to exterminate white people, because that, in my estimation, is the only conclusion I have come to. We have to exterminate white people off of the face of the planet to solve this problem. Now, I don't care whether you clap or not, but I'm saying to you that we need to solve this problem because they are going to kill us. And I will leave on that. So we have to just set up our own system and stop playing and get very serious and not be diverted from coming up with a solution to the problem. And the problem on the planet is white people.
That was former North Carolina State University professor Kamal Kambin. He was speaking at a forum on Hurricane Katrina media coverage at Howard University Law School. Before he issued his call to exterminate white people, Kambin also told the panel, quote, "We are at war," unquote, and that every white person on earth is a slave master.
I got to watching one of the most disturbing videos ever. I think the guy's name is Kamal Kambon, black guy.
The guy who spoke with the code extremely white is well-educated man. Well-educated. Surprisingly, this guy does have a BA degree in education history, master's degree in physical education, an MA and an MA degree in education administration, and the list goes on. It's like, I'm surprised. You know, they say knowledge is power. So
it's the white people. The white people are the ones to blame. And I have a solution for it. What we have to do, sounds a little crazy, but we have to exterminate white people. Exterminate all white people, every single one of them.
Oh boy.
We are going to exterminate white people because that, in my estimation, is the only conclusion I have come to. We have to exterminate white people off of the face of the planet to solve this problem. Now, I don't care whether you clap or not, but I'm...
All right. Okay.
Well, we didn't have television.
Okay.
A lot of people him from that speech. His life was, of course, a lot more than that speech, but the documentary, it takes us through a journey from his childhood up to how, basically it's a thought journey through how he got to that point in his life. And, I actually did a presentation where, at that point in time, my father became the most hated Black man in the United States. And, in that presentation, I said, that's very good company, because that was Nana Nat Turner was the most hated Black man in the United States. That's Baba Omwale Malcolm X was the most hated Black person in the United States. That's Baba Khalid Abdul Muhammad. So like, if I go down the list, that's Nana Gabriel Prosser. So to, at any point in time, be the most hated Black man in the United States of a murderer, it means that you're in very good company. But then beyond that, the reason why I respect my father is not so much in terms of how much crackers hated him, but that he was about what he said that he was about. Like every day, every waking moment, 24/7 about Black liberation. A lot of people, especially in this day and age, they just want likes and clicks and all this type of stuff. They'll go up and they'll say something. But my parents moved from Brooklyn to North Carolina to build their own log cabin in the woods. Why? Because they were about, they said, you know what? We need to not be dependent on these crackers. So they voted with their feet and they moved to North Carolina to build their own log cabin. They dug their own well so that we had our own water supply. We grew our own food growing up so that we had our own food supply. For heating in the winter, we chopped wood. Me and my father were out there chopping wood. So, these are the things that you're not going to hear so much about. You're going to hear the people who are on YouTube and on Facebook and on Insta Spam and on Nitwitter and on TikTok and all these cracker platforms. Those are the people who are going to become famous. But the people who are actually doing the work, you're not going to hear anything about them. So for me, the real respect is that my father was actually about what he said he was about. And I can like I grew up in the quote unquote conscious community. So I grew up around all of the conscious speakers you can name. We had the Blacknificent Bookstore. It was called Blacknificent Books and More, and the Bay New Cultural Center. And the Bay New Cultural Center, every speaker you can imagine came through there. And I never developed the respect from all of those speakers that I did from my parents, because even, looking back in retrospect, if I look at them and I ask myself, what did they build? What did they do? What did their children do? You understand? Where did they live? What, like all of those types of questions of any type of measurement tool in terms of what did this person actually do, then all of them would be found wanting compared to my father and my mother in terms of actually being about what they said they're about. And again, the last Abibi to Me conference, the theme was demonstration over conversation, be about what you say that you're about. And that's one thing that I feel like has been missing. You have people who are trying to raise consciousness, which is a euphemism for go on cracker platforms and enrich crackers by sharing Black knowledge on cracker platforms. And it has to be like, there has to be a shift beyond that, away from, oh, I'm raising consciousness, to I'm raising behavior. And one thing that we can do to raise behavior, I always say we can leave the United States of a murderer. That's one way, because every single time that we pay our mortgage, we are literally financing the bombs that are being dropped in Nigeria. So if we say we don't like those bombs being dropped, but then we pay our mortgage, there's some cognitive dissonance going on at that point. If we say with crackers and all the things they do to Black people throughout the entire world, but we pay a car note, then there's a problem. If we say we have a problem with that, and then we're on Facebook and Insta spam and all this cracker stuff, then there's a problem. So it has to be some point where we actually do something different. And one thing I would say is that the person who's read 1,000 books and the person who's read 0 books, if they're shopping at the same Walmart, then what's the point of your 1,000 books? If they're paying the same car note, if they're paying the same mortgage, if they're working for the same crackers, and crackers work 24/7, 365 and 366 on leap year. What we do is literally we'll go and work for crackers, 40-hour weeks, 48-hour work weeks. And then on the weekend, that's where you can use my Black name. I'm Lumumba Mufasa on the weekend for 2 hours during a lecture. I put on Danshiki and I think good thoughts about Black people. And then I'm going back. I'm like, as a general, let's picture I'm a general. Like I got a chessboard back here, right? Imagine the Black king on the chessboard. Imagine all of the, I don't even let them be white pieces. These are red pieces. Imagine all of those pieces are against me, but then imagine that all of the Black pieces are also working for those pieces. How, as a Black king general, am I supposed to win a war when not only are my enemies fighting against me, my own pieces are also fighting against me? It becomes a very difficult thing. But that's the situation that we found ourselves in, that, Black people who think good thoughts and are, in the United States of a murderer, they're just trying to live, right? They're not even thinking, am I financing the bullets that are shooting Laquan McDonald down in the street? Yes, we are. But we're not thinking about that. We're not thinking about, are we financing the prisons on the prison industrial complex that are literally enslaving? Because again, according to the 13th Amendment, and I wrote an article on this, that slavery shall not exist in the United States of a murderer or any place subject to their jurisdiction, except whereas the party has been duly convicted of a crime. They put that caveat in there because the criminalization of a race, right? Nana Charles McIntyre, that all they have to do is say you committed a crime, especially at a time where you can't even testify against a cracker. All they have to do is you stole a 2x4. Well, that's a felony, right? You stole a pig. You don't even have to have stolen the pig, but all the cracker has to do is say you stole a pig. Now they have convict leasing, which is now they're going to lease you out to lay railroad tracks and drain swamps. That's how the United States of a murderer was built after so-called enslavement. And if you look at worse than slavery or slavery by another name, as different resources you can look up, there was an interview where one of the guards, the prison guard, said, this is better than slavery. During slavery, you have to take care of them even when they're not productive, when they're not working. But with this, all you have to do is arrest one, work them to death, and then go get another one. They said this is better than slavery. And that's exactly where we are right now. And if you look at the prison industrial complex and the United States of a murderer, you can look at companies like HP and the enslaved labor that they have working in the prisons of Black people, working for free. You can look at Boeing, you can look at Microsoft, you can look at, excuse me, all of these cracker companies, and literally we're financing our enslavement. So, that's a little bit about my father, and I kind of, I'm doing a little sidebar here. But, that's a little bit. But for people, check out,
I'm sorry.
I did a presentation that's available on the bb2me.com for the Malcolm X Liberation Institute here in Ghana. And essentially, I went through various of our grandcestors. That's a term that my father coined, various ones of our grandcestors who became the most hated Black people. That's not a David Walker. I went down this whole list and, essentially showed that that's one thing that's worthy of respect because that's a very elite group, right? But even more elite are those who took care of their families, those who are about what they said that they were about in every aspect of life. My father would dream about Black liberation. So that's what I could say about my father.
Before I let you go, I just want to get your quick thoughts on a couple of things. And you thoroughly explained, how your father was, very important and a warrior, like you said, because you have to be very strong to come out like he was and said. But I want to run a couple names by you and just briefly tell me your thoughts as far as basic scholarship. So if I say Dr. Amos Wilson to you, because on this show, I quote him a whole lot. That's one of my favorite guys. So your thoughts on Dr. Amos Wilson, and how should we be studying some of his stuff?
Yeah, I actually quoted him several times already, so that should give you a sense.
I know. Yeah, I mean, just briefly, what you think of when you think about him as his scholarship and his works.
Yeah, so when I was here for study abroad, 2001, I read Blueprint for Black Power cover to cover, and it was one of the most profound books that I, even to date, that I can say that I ever read. The thing, similar to my father, I'll make this connection. The thing I respect most about him is that he opened up his own business, and he had a quote where he said, that's my daughter, he gave a lecture where he said that owning 125th Street is more powerful or more profound, I got to paraphrase him, than giving 1,000 lectures. So imagine you have 1,000 lectures about our past glory and the things that we did and our inventions, and we were the first this and the first that. But then as soon as the youth or whoever walks out of the lecture hall, they got to go across to the Lebanese and the Indo-Aryans and the so-called Jews, random crackers and whatever. That, like, what's the point? You see? So what I respect about him is that he made an effort to actually be about what he said that he's about. And it's very rare that anybody that I know of in the quote unquote conscious community is actively evaluated, on that. Usually it's like their scholarship is just like separate. Like they said cute stuff. They wrote a cute book and now and I feel like it's time to go. The person who wrote that book, I don't know what clothes they wear. I want to know what language they speak. I want to know, did they educate their own children? Like, I want to know about all of those types of things, because actually Nana Amos Wilson, he gives a lecture where he's talking about spirit possession. It's actually the Blueprint for Black Power lecture. And he talks about, those who say slavery was back then, what clothes do you wear? What language do you speak? And he, crescendo on what God do you worship, right? I'm sure you're familiar with that. And like those things, like beyond just the scholarship, even though we could be so-called objective and abstract and just evaluate the scholarship on its own, but for me, the scholarship is activated in the efforts that he made to have his own printing company, African World Info Systems, which is still going under the leadership of Baba Sababu Plata. They had print, they had copy, they had computer centers. So he's actually giving an effort to be about what he says that he's about. So anybody you ask me about their scholarship, those are going to be the things that I'm going to look at in terms of how do I evaluate that person holistically.
I see. That measuring rod, huh? That measuring too. Okay. All right. I'm gonna throw another one at you. I'm gonna throw another one at you. Sheikh Job Shakanta.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. So the way I learned Medu Neter in undergrad from Obinfo Mario Beatty, who is the current head of ASCAC. For those who may not know, that's the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations. And he learned Medu Neter from Obinfo Theophile Obenga. And Theophile Obenga was one of the close associates of Mam Sheikh Anta Diop. So that's my lineage of Medu Neter, right? In terms of his scholarship, groundbreaking, especially for the time in which he brought it forth. One critique that I would have is him marrying a cracker female. That's in terms of like the measuring rod that we're talking about. And I brought this up to Na Chinwezu. For those who may not be familiar, he's a very well-noted author. He has books like The West and the Rest of Us. That's probably his most famous text, Decolonizing the African Mind, Decolonizing African Literature, and so forth. And I made a point to him. I said, I think in some ways, Mam Sheikh Anta Diop's scholarship was compromised by the fact that he had a cracker wife. And he was like, give me an example of that. And I pulled up, I think it was Civilization of Barbarism. I could actually go to the email thread and find it. But one of his arguments to show that the quote unquote Egyptians were black was that they wore wigs. And he said, the fact that they wore wigs is part of this perennial problem that black women have from their hair, that because their hair isn't nice and stringy like a cracker Neanderthal females, I'm paraphrasing that, of course, that's why they had to wear wigs, because their hair isn't nice like a white woman's. And let me actually see if I can pull up this exact quote. And I was like, that's where his own proclivities are working their way into his theorizing and his scholarship, because it's not in classical Kemet that we're like, oh, let me straighten my hair, or let me get fur like a Neanderthal. let me give you the exact quote. Yeah. And if it takes too long, we can move forward. But sure. Now, that's not to, basically reduce all of his work. I quoted him as well, right?
Right.
But just to bring in, that point, because it's a point that needs to be made if we're actually going to move forward with the scholarship and tie the scholarship to the behavior. So for me, we have to go beyond the ideas of raising consciousness to raising behavior. And that's, the only way for me we're actually going to see any forward movement on the work, because otherwise we're just going to be sitting on cracker-owned platforms, sharing information about our glorious past. And meanwhile, crackers like Mark Zuckerberg are like, yeah, tell me more, right? My stock is going up every time you go live. So keep telling me about your glorious past. And meanwhile, I'm going to continue with my glorious present and my glorious future.
Continue stealing our talent in one way or another and profiting off of everything we bring to the table. And while you're looking for that, I'm gonna give you these last two real quick. You can put them together. Ivan Van Sertima and Asa Hilliard.
Very good. So Baba Ivan Van Sertima, I recently wrote an article that won an award where I cited him heavily. It was, my article is called 400 Years, Ancestors Disappear. Historical misorientation and disorientation in the 400 years in Yerevatar narrative. And essentially, people say, oh, enslavement lasted from 1619 to, from 1619. And, now we're celebrating 400 years of enslavement, blah, blah, blah. And, basically the point that I made was that you have enslavement as a process for Western Eurasians starting going back to 1441. And that is Antal Gonzalez and Nuno Tristão, who, actually are recorded in Zurara's Chronica da Guinea, which is a chronicle of Guinea, where he actually goes into the firsthand accounts of, Neanderthals like, again, Antal Gonzalez Nuno Tristão, where he was sent out by Prince Henry the Navigator to get seal skins and oil. And he had this whimsical thought where he said, wouldn't it be great if I can bring the first captives before the face of our prince? Everything that we know of what's now called transatlantic enslavement started with that whimsical thought, right? Because he kidnapped a man, he kidnapped a woman, and then after that, by 1444, you had Lancelot de Freitas, who came back and kidnapped 235 Black people. And, the rest is history. That's how we ended up in Crackerville, that he wasn't even sent to capture people per se, but he had that idea. And now we're dealing with all of the rest of, what came from that. So, in terms of his work, I was citing Nana Abubakar II, who, according to the testimonial of Mansa Musa to Al-Omari on his return from the Hajj, he said that the way that he became the Mansa is that his maternal uncle sent a fleet of ships across the Atlantic, what we now refer to as the Atlantic. And when they didn't come back except for one single, ship, and, he said there was a whirlpool, they weren't able to get out of the whirlpool. So Mansa Abubakar II didn't believe it. So he said that he's going to get even more ships and he's going to, lead this expedition himself. So they went off. And once it was clear that they weren't coming back, that's when he was finally made the Mansa. So I've cited him in other regards as well. But, one thing that came up is that there was an entire journal issue that was dedicated to so-called debunking that came before Columbus. Meanwhile, more recently, they've come out with studies that show that New World monkeys are directly genetically related to Old World monkeys, and most likely they got there some 30 million years ago when a raft may have carried some monkeys across, and that's how they got there. There's a rodent called a caviomorph, and again, they found that these caviomorphs are directly related to those that you find here on the continent. And they say, again, they have this theory that there must have been a storm, and any whatever that comes on these currents is automatically going to find its way to the so-called New World. So they have no problem that monkeys sailed across the Atlantic. They have no problem that rodents sailed across the Atlantic. But the ruler of the richest nation in the history of the world, because you always hear people say Mansa Musa is the richest. He couldn't have been richer than Abubakar II, because Abubakar II, look at how much gold he used to have that first voyage, have that second voyage. Mansa Musa got what was left over, right? But they're saying that the richest nation in history could not have gone across the Atlantic, but monkeys and rodents could have with no problem. So, those are just some of the things that we could look at. So yeah, very, very, like when I look at They Came Before Columbus, it's one of the most thoroughly researched books that you can even imagine, with linguistic data, metallurgical data, climatological data, archival sources, primary, like everything you can imagine put forth. And then crackers are like, no, it can't be so just because they don't want it to be so, right? That's gaslighting. And then Nana Asa Hilliard, he was actually on my mother's PhD committee. So my mother is a former president of the Association of Black Psychologists. So we had a very close relationship. And he actually always endorsed Bibi Tumi. He would encourage people to learn the languages. This is back in like 2006, 2007. I was teaching Chi, Yoruba, Wolof, and so forth. So he would always actively encourage people, learn the languages through Bibi Tumi and so forth and so on. In terms of his scholarship, I actually quoted him as well. I think everybody you asked me about, I quoted in, the one or two presentations I shared. But it's his translations of the instructions of Imahu Patawutet that I was looking at. And both he and Baba Jeli Shemsu Jahuti, also known as Baba Jacob Carruthers, what was so profound about their scholarship is they looked at the two major pillars for us in which we call ourselves Black people, and we operationalize that identity to whoop that cracker behind. That's classical Kemet, and that's in IT, right? So Baba Jedi Shemsu Jahuti has, of course, several books that are related to Kemet, including Medu Neter. Um, he has Kemet and the African worldview, and then he also looks at the irritated genie, right? So he's looking at both sides, you know, classical and contemporary of us calling ourselves Black people and whooping that cracker behind. And then Nana Bafwa Mamkwatia, also known as Baba Asa Hillier, he looked at the maroon within us, you know, look at contemporary, and then also, you know, all of his work on classical Kemet as well. And my own work, which you can even see in the cover of Construction of Black Civilization, is extending on that same link of what makes Kemet relevant to us right now is that was the first instance of, or let's say first recorded instance of us self-identifying as Black people. And what's more important is operationalizing that identity to whoop that cracker behind. And then, you know, looking contemporarily, well, how has that informed us in numerous times? What you see behind me is actually the Abibi Tumi logo. And according to Nkulu Fukiao, my Kikongo language teacher, he says nothing exists that does not follow the cyclical steps of the Dikenga, where you can find everything that exists, whether it's an idea, whether it's a civilization, whether it's anything, it goes through a period of sunrise. And I'm not starting at the beginning because the beginning is actually November, but we can go into why that's the beginning. It goes through a sunrise, it goes through a high point, which is noon. So the sunrise is Kala, that's actually my wife's name. It goes to Tukula, that's the high point. It goes to Luvemba, that's the sunset. And it goes to Musoni, which is like midnight or conception, and then back to a sunrise. So every civilization, every idea, every language, every human being has these stages in our life, right? And that's why you can find in Kikongo, they would say every human being is Ntangwa Moyo, a living son. And then in classical Kemet, we would say that, you know, the ruler will refer to himself as Sa-Ra, the son of the sun, because what we ultimately are just transformations of Ra, Khepuru Ra, which you can even find rulers who have that as part of their name. Neb Khepuru Ra, referring to what they know as Tutankhamun, the living image of Amen. So yeah, everybody you've mentioned so far are very, very solid in terms of scholarship. You know, they've had an impact on me in various ways, as you can even see me citing every last person you mentioned so far, that, you know, these are some of our luminaries, some of our scholars. And yeah, for all of the above, they've had a major impact on my life.
All right, that's good. Yeah, those I think, and I brought them up just to, again, for people to, you know, to really have some more reference points to, and some of our great ones that have left us, you know, to remember them as well when we're talking about history, Black history, African history, and things that nature that gave a lot of us the foundation to move forward with some of the things that we're discovering today. But we always got to keep in account that, you know, they did what they could with what they had at that particular time. And we need to understand that people worked very hard to cover this stuff up, to get rid of this stuff, to bury it. And so when I try to make that relationship between a lot of the stuff, you know, with Christianity the other day is just an adaptation of what we had before. So folks want proof of that. But you got to understand that stuff was hidden, and we still uncovering that particular information. So I can't give you word for word, you know, a translation or a similarity on that, because a lot of those things are just coming out. So my good brother Vince.
The last point I'll make is a point that I've kind of touched on previously, which is once we learn the information, like anything that we learn, there should be what I call a behavioral correlate. That means as soon as I read this book, I need to stop eating the way I was eating before. As soon as I read this book, I need to stop shopping at that place. As soon as there should be, for all of us, a behavioral correlate for all knowledge that we have. Too often, you know, again, we get stuck at the raising consciousness level of, oh, now I'm so conscious, and now I work for IBM with even more vigor because I know we invented stuff. So now let me work for these crackers even harder than I would have before. It's like we would have been better off if you didn't get conscious, because you're working even harder to enrich our enemies. So, you know, these are the things that I feel like to really move things forward. Abimfo Manuam Pim always talks about advancing the research, right? And more than advancing the research, even though that's one component of it, is advancing the behavior, right? And that's, in all aspects, where it comes to psychology, where it comes to culture, history, where it comes to economics, where it comes to education, where it comes to health, where it comes to spirituality, where it comes to political, where it comes to social. And in all areas, it's really, what am I doing, or whatever I'm doing right now, is it working towards Black liberation in the area of psychology? Or is it working towards white world terror domination in the area of psychology? This particular thing I'm doing right now, is it working towards Black liberation in the area of culture? Or is it working towards white world terror domination in the area of culture? Is it working towards Black liberation in the area of economics? So every single thing we do, and of course, none of us are perfect and I got everything covered. I'm done. Everybody worship me. That's not even what it's about. For me, it's more trajectory than position. What do I mean? Let's say you have somebody on the continent who speaks our own language, wears our own clothes and so forth, but their most fervent goal is to go to Crackerville and work for crackers. So their position seems advantageous, but their trajectory, their direction is going in the wrong direction. Now let's say there's a brother in the United States of a murderer who just read his first book, Destruction of Black Civilization. He's like, you know what? I got to get more. I need to do something. I need to, grow my own food. His position is perhaps less advantageous, but his trajectory, he's moving in the right direction. So I don't want people to be like, oh yeah, this person has reached the pinnacle, now let's clap for them. That's not what it's about. It's about continuing in that trajectory. And I just pulled out a visual that I can probably close out with that comes from the presentation that I mentioned that I did about Baba Omoale and my father. And this is it, right? So most people like to applaud a fallen warrior at the place he fell, but I say that we should rather pick up his weapons and continue fighting in the direction of Abibi Tumi Black Power and Abibi Fahodie. For most of us, like you mentioned those names of our luminary scholars and warriors. There are a couple of things we can do, and they don't have to be mutually exclusive. But what most people like to do is just clap and say, "Oh, they did a good job. Oh, they did a good job." Now, meanwhile, our grandsons are like, no, keep fighting. And we're just standing right over there with their body. So no, we can't fight. Just good job. Let's keep clapping. Keep fighting. Keep fighting. And that's where we get stuck. So I say the best way to honor a fallen warrior is to pick up his spear and shield. This is a billboard we actually took out here in the Eastern region for my father's 40th day celebration. And, this is the work that I continue to do, in various ways. So that's, if there's anything I can leave your, listeners with and viewers with, it would be that the reason why we erected a statue of my father is because he was actually about what he said he was about. And the people who respect Baba Omoale, who knew him, they say he was the exact same way. It's not like he was giving a lecture about this and then behind closed doors, he was, chilling out with crackers and about. No, he was, about what he said he was about. And I think that there has to be a different level of grandcestors beyond those who may have put out some scholarship that sounds cute when it comes to those who actually did what they said that they were about. So I'll close on that point. And the name of that talk, for those who are interested, it was called Celebrating the Centenary, 100 Years of Baba Omoale. So yeah, you can check that out.
Okay. All right. Very, very good. Very good. My brother Vince.
I'm full, bro. I'm full. I've taken quite a few notes. I really like the phrase demonstration beats conversation, because it ain't about what you say, it's about what you do. I also took notes about Insta spam, trick talk, fake book. And
the words.
we have a linguist in our presence,
Yes. You use those liberally.
Yes.
As you exit those spaces, feel free to use them liberally. And let me share this with you. So we have our own in-house media team called Quinto Hepper, and they actually have a song that we premiered through Abibi Tumi exclusively that's called Demonstration of a Conversation. I'll play maybe 1 minute of it just so you can get a sense of the vibe. If you like that bass line.
And you know we like that bass line.
Time to be about what we say we are. No more chasing shadows, no more falling stars. Energy wasted, resources drained. Building the land of love, keep us chained. If we want black, let's mean black, not just words. It's time to act. Demonstration, no conversation. Walk the talk, no hesitation. Build it up, break it down. Time to be what we're about. We're about. Oh. Money in their pockets while we bleed dry.
Okay.
All right. So the book is The Construction of Black Civilization. Obviously, it is an homage to Chancellor Williams and his great work, The Destruction of Black Civilization. Would like to let folks know how they can acquire that book. You also mentioned a documentary that I'm sure that there's interest in viewing. So if you share that link with me, I will share it in the description for this video. Also, you mentioned the platform. I think you mentioned it was Abibi Toomey. Is that a social media platform that you have?
It's a social education platform. What y'all call social media, I call cesspool media. So yes, this is social education, which is, where like people were like, wow, how do you know so much? Well, I have 12,000, between 12 and 13,000 people who are constantly sharing this type of information that I'm sharing with you here today. So if you want to be part of that, then, you can definitely do so. A lot of people got the crackers ice is colder syndrome and so forth. And, if you want to see a racist, then just start a black business and you're going to find some black racists who are going to be tooth and nail against doing anything black, because of course the white man's ice is colder. However, there's a proverb in Kikama that say, "Dianguba ye nkwameno," eat ground nuts with those who have teeth. And what a BB2Me is a space for those who have teeth, right? Essentially circling the wagons with all of those who are actually interested in being in a 100% black space. We don't allow any crackers on the digital space. And we also don't allow any crackers at a BB2Me headquarters, which is where I'm located right now. We've had some who've actually tried to come here and we turned them away that, no, this is the land of black people. Why? Because in my research for the book, Construction of Black Civilization, that's what I came to, is that we kept building walls to keep them out. Anytime they came in, we drove them out. For the good, just about 2,000 years that we maintained that policy, Kemet was strong. As soon as we shifted away from that policy, the rest is history. Look at the closest genetic relatives of all of these rulers aren't even located in that space anymore because, again, the floodgates open. And there's a proverb that says, evil enters like a needle and spreads like an oak tree. That's exactly what we saw in classical Kemet. First with the coming of the Hyksos, the Hakau Hasut, and then, first coming in, bringing offerings and so forth and so on. After they got a foothold, now they come with their military. You can actually see what they did to Nana Sekanin Reitao. We can see spear marks and axe marks in his forehead and so forth. And from there, Sarah Kamos and Sarah Yamos went back to the original plan, going back to Heru Namar's time, which is whipping that cracker behind, away with the Neanderthal. Don't pet the Neanderthal because, of course, he will bite you.
Okay. All right.
Again, just want to thank you for joining us with 360 Info Network. Quite a bit to chew on. I would suggest to those of you who have witnessed this broadcast, replay it. Go back, watch the slides, listen to the narration, and learn, because there's so much to unpack with that. So we thank you for providing this to us on this social monster platform, I'll say, and utilize my abilities as a
monsters too. So if you want to use that, you can also call them male monsters. We got
Okay.
male mouse to Neanderthals. We can keep going all day. And one thing, you know, it's the info. My
Well,
father would always say, it's not so much about information, but it's about getting information, right? So now we're in information.
Right on. I like that. Information, yes.
Yeah.
I like
Hey,
that.
No conversation, brother.
Gonna have to
Yes,
have
sir.
you back soon. Thank you for joining us from over there on the other side of the world, where my two brothers are soaking up the sunshine and breathing some great air, and not looking at chemtrails the way we're looking at them over the United
Yeah.
States. You know, Brother Antonio, since I've been here, I have not noticed a single chemtrail. I've noticed clouds that look like real clouds. It's amazing what happens when you leave, as my brother says, United Snakes of a murderer.
Of a murder. Well,
All
again,
right.
my brother, I appreciate you to the fullest, and please don't be a stranger. And coming back on, maybe we can set this up some kind of way on your platform. You know, we'll work that out some kind of way. Yeah, we'll stay in conversation in reference to that. Okay, and that'll be great.
Last thing I'll just share, we have an initiative that's been endorsed by the Office of the President here in Ghana. It's called Decade of Our Repatriation, DOOR, and where the subtitle is Ghana's Great Brain Gain, right? So people talk about the brain drain. This is the brain gain where we're actually assisting people 360 degrees in terms of repatriation services. So for those who are interested, you can check repatriatetogana.com, repatriatetogana.com. And I'll put that in the chat. The short URL is r2gh.com. It'll take you to the same website. And you can also go to door.events with an S, to check out the information about Decade of Our Repatriation. We've been doing tree classes here in Ghana. We've had conferences, film festivals. We've done a town hall meeting. And again, we have some multi-million-dollar projects and even multi-billion-dollar projects that are part of Decade of Our Repatriation. Kriakrum is a $100 billion city that's been proposed for Ghana. There is the Beyond View, which is actually already, up and running. We have people living there. That's a brother Dre Taylor, who's one of our partners. We have Kazi Kweko Ando Sustainability Institute, which is an eco resort and training facility in the Volta region. We have brother Calvin Daniels, who has a 46-acre moringa farm that he's expanding out to 400 acres in the next couple of months. So these are people who are actually coming here and making an impact, and they are basically assisting others who are looking at repatriating, because you may wonder, if I repatriate, well, who can I work for? Well, you can help. You can be part of building a $100 billion city. How about that? So, these are some of the things. And a lot of people like, well, is it perfect yet? They stay on the beach, on the shore with binoculars. Oh, it's not perfect in Ghana yet. So, call me when it's perfect. And I'm like, yo, you got to be part of making it perfect, because, of course, the stench that you call the French, they're not going to help. The brutish, you call the British, they're not going to do anything for it. The vermin, who you call the German, they're not going to help. The pork of Greece, who you call the Portuguese, they're not going to help. Ku Klux Klan isn't going to help. The United Snakes of a murderer isn't going to help. These Neanderthals aren't going to help us do anything. So if we want this land to be a superpower, a black power, then we're the only ones who can make it happen, as it was in classical Kemet, as it was in IT, as it was, Nana Paul Bogle said, cleave to the black, as all of our ancestors have told us, until this place is a world power, no black person anywhere on the planet Earth will ever be respected. And Nana Marcus Garvey and African fundamentalism, he dreamed of a Negro empire upon which the sun will never set. Well, we have black people situated in those places, but we think that we're Americans and brutish. I'll make this last point. I keep saying last point, but I actually want to do an article on how we name ourselves after every enemy we've ever had, where our ancestors will literally fight militarily against that enemy, and then their descendants will come around and say, we're the Black Hebrews. So the Hyksos, we drove them out in the first recorded war of Black liberation. Those Hyksos went on to found Jerusalem, but now because of their narrative storytelling, we say, oh, they were the oppressed, let my people go. blah, blah. We're the Black Hebrews. Even Nana David Walker did that same thing, right? We'll say Black Greeks. I don't know if I may step on some toes with this, but our ancestors, they were actually Okunrin Talowa Adodo. He just did a presentation on the rebellions under the the Greeks there after Alexander the Greek came in. There were actually rebellions of the Black people to try to drive them out. But nowadays, you got Black people who are naming themselves after their enemies and calling themselves Black Greeks. You got, Black Arabs, right? You got Black British. You got Black Americans. You got, every enemy we've ever had in history. We're saying we're a Black version of that enemy, as opposed to saying we are Abibifo, which translates to Black people, as opposed to saying we're Kemet to you, which translates to Black people, as opposed to saying we're Kemet to you, which translates to Black people, as opposed to we're saying that we are in DCOG, talking about Black people, as opposed to saying we're Bandombe, which translates to Black people. In our languages, anytime we conceptualize ourselves in relationship to charcoal being these are the Black people. And when we see what our goal spiritually was to become Kem-Ur. Who is Kem-Ur? That was Asar. So once you recite the 42 quote unquote declarations, as people call them, then your heart will be weighed against the feather of Ma'at. If it's lighter, then you can become like Usir, who is the great Black one, Kem-Ur. Or if you're female, you can be like Kemet, which translates to the Black woman. That was Aset. You understand? So that is what we always conceptualize ourselves as long before, like we never called crackers white, back in the day in Kemet. We called them foreigners to the land of Black people. We called ourselves Black. But again, we have to understand Black from our own worldview. We're aspiring to being the perfect Black, like Usir was back in the day. So I'll pause on that because we could go all day, but I hope this has been beneficial and helpful. And again, the demonstration over conversation starts right now if it hasn't already started. I'm looking forward to seeing y'all on Abibi Tumi, all of your listeners on Abibi Tumi. Otherwise, well, let me not even leave an otherwise. Y'all just
But I we agree with you. I understand, because that's one thing we need to understand. Everything we ain't doing them for supporting the same people that are keeping their foot on our neck. It's I understand. For real.
Well,
again, my brother, go ahead, Vince, wrap us up.
I was just gonna say this is Baba Yao Ansa, and I'm happy to say we'll see you next time. And I'm going to ask my brother to hang on for just a few more moments as we clear the broadcast. So I'm going to have a word with Antonio, and we will see you next Saturday on AM 1490 WERE, live to YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. As always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself, make today your absolute best day. Peace, everyone.
Peace.
Habibi Tumi, Habibi Family.
Right.